Alright, today we're going to do some gluten-free cooking. We're going to make what's called a trench cake. It's a World War I cake recipe that doesn't use any eggs. You might have heard of something similar called a wacky cake. It uses baking soda and vinegar to create a chemical reaction, and that replaces the eggs. It's really tasty. It's not very sweet, but you can definitely taste the chocolate, the cinnamon, and a hint of lemon. Let's go make it. The first thing we're going to do is weigh out our flour mix. I'm going to be using 3 flours, kind of just because I have some I want to use up. Now I'll put the ingredients on the screen and in the box below, but as I said, we're going to start with our flour mix of mostly this flour, a small portion of this, and a very little bit of this. We're going to be measuring out 215 grams, and we'll start with the coconut flour. Just going to go for about 10 grams of this. Next we'll use our blend. That I'm going to shoot for a little bit more. I'm going to use up what I've got in the bag, which is only going to get me to 68 grams. That's with the 10 already of the coconut. And then we'll finish off with our RYZE Yellow. Okay, for a total of 215 grams of flour. We're going to add that to my mixer. You could use a pastry blender for this recipe if you wanted to. We're basically going to crumble in some butter to that flour, kind of like you would to start off a biscuit. That's how we're going to get this cake going. We need 120 grams of butter. My sticks are always short for some reason, and I've only got 115. Cut off a little extra. Now that takes me over to 124. I'm not going to worry about it. A little extra butter never hurt anybody. Just going to cube it up real quick. To that. Add that in. I'm going to stir that on a low speed to crumble it. Alright, we've crumbled that butter with our flour down to a pretty small consistency. We're looking for it to look a little something like this. See how it's sticking together a little? Alright. To that, we are going to add our spice mix. Some of the recipes online have it a little different. I like to do a mix of cinnamon, ginger, and again, the ingredients will be in the box below. Nutmeg, lemon rind, which for the first time I will be using a dried version. I have been shaving the rind off of lemons for most of the other times I've made this recipe, but this time I thought I'd try this out. Our last spice for this recipe is going to be some cocoa powder. And then we're just going to give this a quick mix to blend the powders. Next we're going to weigh out our sweetener and raisins. For our sweetener we're going to do a mix of agave and maple syrup. We need 90 grams, so I try and do about 45 of each. Sometimes I go a little over of one or the other. Doesn't really matter. So there's our sweetener mix. I'm going to add to that my raisins, which will take me another 90 grams up to 180. I like to give these a little stir so the sweetener gets all over all of the raisins before I pour it inside the mix. Okay, we'll add those raisins and sweetener in. Give that a stir to get it all combined. Our last set of ingredients is our milk blend. What we need is 4 ounces of milk, and you can use coconut milk if you'd like. I have used it in the past and it has worked perfectly. For this recipe right now, I'll just be using regular milk though. Okay, 4 ounces of milk. To that, we are going to add a half a teaspoon of baking soda, and a teaspoon of vinegar. We're going to stir that up and let it sit a minute. This chemical reaction that we're creating inside our milk is going to do the job of replacing our eggs for us in this recipe. I'll be using rags. You want to see a little bubble, and when you add that in there, just give it a nice stir so that all that baking soda gets dissolved. You're going to add that to what we've already got mixed up, and then we'll be done. Mixing, that is. Okay, now I've got 9-inch pie tin greased and ready to go. So this is what we've come up with. We're going to stick it in the oven and bake it. So it's been about 45 minutes. My toothpick is coming out. Just a little bit of stuff still on it. I'm going to leave it for another 5 or so minutes. Okay, so we are at the 55-minute mark now, and yep, nothing coming out on that. Looks done to me. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this video. Bye!